Yeah, so that is my project, Pelis in Kenya. That is my name. That is my young daughter.
She's beautiful, Christine.
Oh, thank you. So, Pelis, Pelis means Plantation Establishment and Livelihood Improvement Scheme. This is a scheme that was introduced in 2005 by the government to replace another system that I had mentioned before called Shamba system of forest conservation. In the Shamba system, members of the community were not surrounding community. Actually, the government used to use its own officers to cultivate the bare land in the forest while planting trees at the same time. So they expected that plantations will be established. But what happened is that the government officers just cultivated the land but did not ensure that the seedlings survived. So actually, the Shamba system failed, and much of the forest cover was destroyed. So the government came up with this new scheme, Pelis, that involves the neighboring communities, the communities neighboring the forest, so that the communities can be able to manage the forest, and as they manage it, they use it to improve their livelihood. There are some activities that they are allowed to carry out in the forest as they get some income from those activities. So that will make it to act as an incentive for them to be able to conserve that forest. As they are using the forest, they are supposed to be organized in groups. Those groups are called community welfare groups. They are called Community Forest Association. The, the CFA, Community Forest Association, is supposed to sign an agreement with the Kenya Forest Service for the use and protection of the forest. Let us look at the benefits of Pelis. Number one benefit is for establishment of plantation. They want to use the normal people, the common people surrounding the forest. As they cultivate, they also establish the seedlings. Number two, should be a source of livelihood for the communities. Number three, preservation of culture. And number four, preservation of wildlife. Looking at the fourth point, preservation of wildlife, here in Kenya, wildlife and forests are conjoined because wildlife are usually found in the forest. So it is upon the community members to ensure that as they preserve the forest, they also preserve wildlife by doing away with practices like poaching or killing animals for meat. Now, the clip here shows a young man driving camels into a plantation. This plantation is this plantation is sorry. This plantation is acacia. Camels usually feed on the acacia, but there is no way that the plantation will be destroyed because camels just feed on the trees. But the farmer can benefit by selling the camels, getting milk, and also getting meat, and selling the skin or the hides of the camel. Then another group, this is from a forest, another group that was keeping honey. So they are able to make forest honey for sale. That is another source of livelihood. Food security, we say that as they cultivate, they also plant food crops. We can see from this clip, this guy has already harvested potatoes, but there is still maize. So it can be a good source of food security meanwhile as they establish the plantation. Preservation of culture. In Kenya, there are some communities like my Kalenjin community where the young men who have undergone initiation usually go for mentoring, but they don't mix with the rest of the population. this mentoring is done in a secluded, hidden area, mostly in the forest. So it is important that the community conserves the forest so that they can have a place where they can continue with their culture. Methods used or not used. Now, my project is a secondary one because one of the methods that is asset pentagon, where the community members in households will be able to identify the assets that they have. Because each household, no matter how they look like, they do not have assets. Usually they have assets because we have different types of assets, not only financial. There is also social assets and other types of assets. So asset pentagon is important for identification of assets. And as they draw the pentagons, for some of them, the pentagons will be narrow because maybe they have less assets. Those ones with more assets have a wider pentagon. So the aim here is to widen the pentagon. Number 2 is livelihood strategy, where members of the community should identify the assets that they have, the capabilities and the activities, and how they can combine this for a desirable livelihood outcome. For example, good health facilities, how they can come up with good infrastructure, how they can improve the kind of diet, that is food security. So livelihood strategy and asset pentagon are the methods that are identified that can be used in this project to help the people improve their livelihood. Then there is community. In the first instance, that was the Shamba system. What made that system fail, that they were not able to establish plantations, was because the community participation was ignored, and the people who came to establish the plantations were actually foreigners. So what they did was to destroy the forest, because after all, it is not theirs, and they used it for their own good. We were also supposed to reflect on the use of these forests and the methods. One, we were looking at how members can benefit without destroying the forest. How conflicts will be resolved, because usually there will be conflict, for example, like in the allocation of plots. How will those conflicts be reduced for the satisfaction of the members? And then lastly, how they can be able to use their assets in various capacities. For example, leveraging one type of asset for another. Like if a person is a member of a social welfare group and some savings have been made, then they can use that to get a loan, which means now we are leveraging financial capital from social capital. So once they have got the loan, they can now use the money to improve their livelihood. For example, to build a better house. Look at that clip. We had said that the members of the community, it is called CFA, Community Forest Association, should first hold a meeting to sign an agreement and look at the constitution. They make a constitution on how they are going to use the fort with their people. So in this meeting, the fellows in uniform are officials from the Kenya Forest Service. Then the other are the members of the local Community Forest Association. So mainly they will meet, make an agreement, and the constitution that they will adhere to as they use the forest. Realize also that this meeting is in a school. So it is always important that the schools are incorporated as members of the Community Forest Association. Sometimes when there is a tree planting, we want the children also to participate so that we start teaching conservation at an early age. So usually we are advised that the schools should also be members of the CFA.
Christine?
Let us look at this clip where there is a woman in a plantation. Realize that she's plowing, but also there are some seedlings that have established, isn't it? So we are hoping that this will grow into a plantation. We are hoping that by the end of some period of time, this cultivation will stop and a plantation will be established. So that is it. Hello?
Thank you, Christine. Christine, the slide of the CFA meeting.
Yes.
I was curious, are women allowed to participate in those meetings?
Yes, women are allowed to participate in these meetings, but usually in communities where the enlightenment is still very low, most of the time you will get only men. But in communities where there is enlightenment, mostly you will find men and women in the committee. If you look at that clip, somewhere, can you see a lady somewhere?
I cannot, but it's my screen is quite small, so that doesn't mean there's not a woman there.
There is somewhere. There is a woman.
Okay.
There is a lady.
All right.
Yeah, there is a lady. But I only know one lady in that clip.
Okay. Christine, I was also, and you might have mentioned this. Apologies if I missed it, but who owns and manages? Does the government own the plantation, or is that ownership given over to the village or the community?
No, the government owns the forests.
Okay.
Communities are only allowed to use and maintain the forest.
To manage.
They don't own
Okay.
forest.
All right.
Although in homes there are private plantations. People have woodlots of their own. Those are owned by the farmers. But forests is for the Kenya Forest Service.
Okay. And did you, in your opinion, Pelis is a better solution than the previous model, which failed because it did not include the communities themselves, the local stakeholders?
In my opinion, yes. When you look at the products, there is honey. In my real project, we have other products like butterfly farming, silk farming. What is happening there is that there is nowhere where the forest is being destroyed. The communities are just carrying out their activities inside the forest. So there is no removal of trees or logs. In Shamba system, they cut the trees to pave way for cultivation.
Right.
So now, the land was left bare because the trees had been cut.
Right.
So what actually Pelis is doing is trying to replace the plantations that were cut down.
So it's a very different kind of plantation than what was working under the previous system. It's a
Yes, actually, these are
natural
new
plantation.
plantations.
Yeah. Well, it is an interesting application of seed scale. You may have noticed, which is all about devolving power and responsibility to the local stakeholders, and how that can be a means of improving livelihoods. So, Albert, do you have any questions for Christine?
Yes, that's a very good presentation. I'd like to know if there is no kind of conflict between the agricultural land and the forest. Because I saw in the presentation that one of the benefits is that the communities have land to cultivate. But I was wondering if there is no tendency to compare what people get from cultivating and from the forest.
The cultivation is not permanent. Cultivation is only being done in the areas where the land is bare, where there are no trees completely. So it is like they are establishing a new plantation. You see, Albert, the person is cultivating food crops, but within the food crops, there are some trees that have been planted. Let us look at on food security. Are you there?
Okay, good.
This guy has some cypress there. Have you seen that? And he has also harvested some potatoes.
Yes.
When these cypress trees establish and they grow tall and a canopy is formed, they will no longer be allowed to cultivate. But they are still allowed to carry out other practices like production of honey or taking care of their animals inside the forest. But cultivation will stop once the trees have grown and established a canopy.
Yeah.
Is that what you asked?
I was thinking if the benefits from this land is very, very good. I was thinking that there could be a tendency to extend the cultivable land, but maybe the trees are some special trees that can cohabit with the crops.
Once the canopy has formed, then there will be no more light for the crops. And again, because this is government land and the aim is to establish a plantation, once the tree plantation has been established, then the cultivation stops.
Yeah.
And so just so I'm clear, Christine, so once the cypress tree in the photo there grows, and the farmer is no longer able to cultivate potatoes or maize, what will be the revenue source?
They are now supposed to shift to other sources of livelihood apart from cultivation here. And
Okay.
maybe I would also inform you that these farmers, it is not that this is their only piece of land.
I see.
They pay some kind of rent to the government to come and cultivate here. So it is temporary. Are you getting me?
Yes, I understand.
This piece of land belongs to the government. It is temporary. Once this plantation has established, then the agreement, you remember they were signing an agreement?
Yes.
The agreement comes to an end, yes.
Okay, now I understand. Because before I was thinking these communities live near the plantation, near the forest, and maybe could pretend that the forest is theirs.
No, there is clear
But
demarcation.
okay. Thank you.
In fact, they don't live inside here. They just go to cultivate and go back to their homes.
Very interesting. Very interesting model. And Christine, is
And
the
the rates, yes?
so excuse me, is this being is this a prototype in Kenya, or is this model being used across the country?
It is being used across the country in Kenya.
Right.
Across the country in Kenya.
Okay.
All forests are now managed by the CFA in conjunction with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry.
Good. Excellent. Very interesting presentation.